So, episode 40 of the British Boxing Blog podcast, I believe. 40. It's took a five years to do 40 podcasts.
Got there in the end.
Exactly. So quite a nice milestone. But a lot to discuss after.
I think it's potentially going to be one of the longest ones based on last night's action and everything that's happened.
I know, a lot to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah. Where do you want to start? I've got a few notes, but we'll just pick and choose. We'll dip in and out.
Might as well start with the big fellas with the main event. Just mad. I guess that's the reason people love heavyweight boxing and boxing in general. Just that just amazing. Just that punch, that moment, that oh my god moment when you're watching it, and Dillian Whyte gone down like that after putting Povetkin down twice earlier in the fight. It's just mad. Just an amazing sort of climax to a mad few rounds.
Some nice summary. We'll leave it there.
It was just beautiful, like a beautiful shot, and like everything was against him at that point. He was, as I said, he's been down twice already, and then he's just pulled that out of. Well, there's an argument he's pulled it out of nowhere, and it's a punch from the gods, but also it was a beautiful shot as well. Do you know what I mean? It didn't have the air of a desperate man. It was quite calculated, and it was just class. It was really good.
Yeah, I think the phrase "punch from the gods" seems more like a criticism, or it's developed into that. Right? Obviously, Joshua used it with Ruiz, and with Ruiz, it was sort of sustained beaten. He put him down a couple of times and eventually sort of got to him. Whereas with Povetkin, it's almost like, you can say it was a punch from the gods, but I don't think that necessarily means that he was lucky throwing it. It was something, he's an Olympic gold medalist. He's obviously a very skilled operator, and as he's heavyweight, you're talking like well above 200 pounds in weight, and he's absolutely he relaxed into it as well. It wasn't like a massive, it sounds silly saying there wasn't a massive amount of force behind it, because obviously there was, but it was sort of quite subtle and quite disguised, like he'd been digging him to the body with a left in the previous rounds, and you could almost see Whyte drop his arm in that split second anyway to try and guard his body in, and it's just come up.
He just that little sort of opening the space, taking his head, moving his head up, and then just finding that little gap, and then you're changing it up, like you said, instead of going to the body.
He'd actually thrown a few earlier on as well, Povetkin. He was a bit short with the right hand coming over the top, but on the inside, he tried to throw a couple of uppercuts, and Whyte's balance or his footwork, whatever you want to credit him with, it was good because his head was out of the way, and like Povetkin, you don't want to miss too many of those punches, and they'll take it out of you, especially at 40, 41-year-old, whatever he is. But like that one, it was just absolutely perfect. I mean, how many times do you see someone get sparked clean like that with an uppercut? Normally, an uppercut's that shot. It's like a sneaky shot on the inside to open a gap to the body potentially, but just the action, everything on it, and like everything you've said as well. The fact Whyte was in charge. He had his fourth round. You just thought, right, this is it was absolutely dominant. He put Povetkin down twice. He's well on top. So you think Povetkin's dangerous early on. Has Whyte flipped that on its head? Is he going to then take it into the later rounds and basically get him out of there? But it wasn't even long into the fifth round either. That's what.
No, it wasn't. It was mad, and like you say, it was a beautiful punch to win a fight with. But Whyte was boxing well. And them two knockdowns, especially. I loved the second one, just that sort of little sharp, little quick, fast counter punch and bang. But I love that one from Whyte. I know it means.
And a lot was made in the build-up of Dave Caldwell coming in. Sort of, was it 4 or 5 days beforehand? Whyte leaving, Mark Tibbs training out in Portugal, potentially a lot of upheaval. So there was a lot of interest and intrigue around how Whyte was going to look. Obviously, he looked physically, he was a lot better shape than his last fight against WAC, when he's out in Saudi Arabia. Wasn't it? And he didn't look in the best of shape. But he looked fluid. I don't think it was as dominant as the commentators would lead you to believe. And we'll no doubt get onto that in a bit more detail. That's like a topic all on its own. But he'd obviously won the fourth round handily, talking 10-8, 10-7 potentially round. I think you can give him the third as well quite comfortably. His jab was fluid. It was had enough pop in it to keep Povetkin honest, to keep him on from sort of walking him down. And
his jab was very good.
He landed a lot of it, like,
it was cracking.
He landed some good shots to the body himself as well, and he was mixing it up, and he just looked too fresh, too good for Povetkin for, well, I don't want to say for the 4 out of the 5 rounds, but up to that point, it was very hard to see how it was going any other way. And then
Povetkin did look
heavyweight boxing in it. Like, I mean, boxing at any level, at any weight class, could contain knockouts like that. But I think, like, I tweeted quite a bit in the immediate build-up, like yesterday and Friday, about, like, I just felt Povetkin, like, yes, he'd have the power, but would he be able to detonate? Would he be able to execute something like that? And obviously, emphatically, he said yes, he's still got that in him.
Absolutely, and like you say, it was an amazing shot. But where's my Twitter thought gone there? What I was going to say to you there. The Povetkin looked old going back to the corner at the end of the 4th, and there was murmurs now on social media that his corner were tempted to pull him out at the end of that 4th, and because he was boxing well, right? And I like sort of getting onto this commentary thing there, but first 2 rounds I thought he was boxing really well, and especially the first and stuff. And the second as well, he was landing some good body shots in that, which weren't picked up by the commentating team on Sky. Eddie Hearn mentioned it in a couple of interviews after. He said, "Oh yeah, Povetkin started well," and I thought, well, that's good that he saw that from ringside. Do you know what I mean? And like he was White.
Yeah, and this is it. I think it wasn't like the sort of masterclass, the absolute schooling that a lot of people would believe. Not just the commentary. There was a few on Twitter. So, like, again, whether they've sort of absorbed what's been said on TV, but oh no, like, White he's on top, he's dominating, it was a clinic, and it was far from that. Like, the opening rounds were fairly competitive. It was, I used the phrase tit for tat. You could argue White was getting the better of it, but he was still taking a couple of shots himself. Povetkin was in there, and again, it's massively hindsight, because following the 4th round, like, there's not a chance I'd have predicted anything like what happened to end the fight. But you can see now, if you look back and like watch it again, you'll see that, like, Povetkin was sort of testing the water with little combinations and trying to find those gaps, and then, like, obviously he's executed, as I say, with clinical precision on it. He's not going to a better shot than that in his career, and to be fair, he's got good knockouts on his record as well.
It was class, but he did look a bit old, as to say, going back that corner in the 4th, and I thought, he'd been down twice, and I thought, oh no, I was a bit thinking, a bit annoyed, because I was sort of not singing his praises on Twitter, but I was just trying to highlight that he was doing some good work in there. Do you know what I mean? And then he came out with that punch, and it was amazing, and I would like to see them do it again. Whether
I was going to ask that, actually, because you've had a fight with like 3 knockdowns in total, split across the 2 fighters, both sort of that, I think, world level, you've got to call them, fringe world level, if you've been particularly critical. Like, they're in that mix, definitely. We're talking, I think it was Darren Ray on Twitter said yesterday about like the Povetkin's top 5 heavyweight in the world following that, and like, it's hard to argue with that, but
I think he's been a top heavyweight for...
Would you then want to see the rematch? There's a lot of rumours floating around about a rematch clause, and it's going to happen next. Like, White was saying he wanted by the end of the year to obviously right that wrong.
It's funny
from his perspective. But are we not in that situation where if White had won,
of course we are,
he'd have been moving on to that mandatory position for Fury, isn't it, with the WBC? Or the Fury Wilder winner, I think we've got to class it as officially. But then, if you've got Povetkin and White, does that then delay it further? Because, I mean, obviously, a lot has been made about how long White's been number 1, over 1,000 days or whatever it is. How long he's been officially the mandatory, which is the slight sort of difference there. Not as long, but still, you're talking about a year or whatever. Approximately a year, I think now. Obviously, with everything gone on and boxing not essentially having happened for most of this year, it's the double standards, isn't it, of being the home fighter. You lose, so then suddenly you get that chance to right the wrong. Whereas the away fighter, if it's in the contract, then obviously there's nothing to do about it. But like now, Povetkin's in that mandatory position, but it all resets. So like the talking, I think, was like Rob Tebbett. Obviously, he's got a good rapport with the WBC, and they'll say generally, I think now like it'll be another year before Povetkin's enforced as the mandatory. So, can we afford to wait that long? Does that delay it? Does that help a potential unification with like Fury and Joshua now that
that's it. It's like
it's not in the way, so to speak?
We never heard a single thing about a rematch clause all through the week. Do you know what I mean? And it was never in that narrative to like, if White had won, do you think people would be talking about activating rematch clauses and all that shit? Do you know what I mean? It's only started last night.
No, definitely not.
Like, oh yeah, there's a rematch clause. You're like, well, that wasn't in your script or your narrative. Do you know what I mean? So
this is the thing. This is where you obviously have your advisors and your management team, whether it's the promoters, whoever. Like they've agreed to fight Povetkin, and I don't know whether it was sort of enforced as an eliminator from the WBC or if it's like a voluntary. I don't know if you can get like voluntary eliminators and things like that. Like obviously the WBC have approved it and they're happy to have Povetkin ranked, but then if it's something that WBC have enforced, how's that like? Where's the rematch clause come into that? Like the whole issue of mandatories, isn't it? Like a mandatory title defense in the normal sense, you don't have that. It's something you've got to get out of, like you've got to do, which is why White reportedly, that was his reasoning for turning down the Joshua fight, that he was going in as a voluntary, and if he won, he'd have to rematch with less than favourable terms for him. And he was saying, well, no, I'm going to do it as a mandatory, so then I don't have this political bullshit of rematch clauses and stuff. It's all a bit like, obviously, at the end of the day, money talks, and that's what's going to happen. Like if
that's it, I know it is
enough to come back over, you'll be back over.
I think it will. I think they'll go again. I think I see Billy Nelson say on Twitter that he thinks maybe Dillian shouldn't go straight into that immediate rematch, but he didn't do a lot wrong, to be honest with you. He even said this morning in an interview. I think it was with Sky Sports. I think, and he was like, "Oh, I got beat." But like, what would you have changed about Dillian's first 4 rounds there? Really? Do you know what I mean? Like, take away the knockdown. Like he'd had him on the floor twice. He did look the fresher and the younger, and he was boxing quite nicely. And I think, well, it's not a case of, I don't think he really needs to go back to the drawing board. Do you know what I mean? Like he hasn't just dipped massive levels down. He doesn't need tune-ups and all that now. I don't think, because what would that gain him? He had a tune-up against Whack and it stunk. Do you know what I mean? Like I just think why he was he was beat by a hell of a punch, and I don't know, like, why not just go in again towards the end of the year, November, December, and the public will want to see it. It's 3 knockdowns and like a really big knockdown in sort of just over 4 rounds of boxing. Like, why would you not want to see that again? Do you know what I mean? And like, it's hard to like, as you say, the whole landscape of the heavyweights and mandatories and blah, 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 Fury, while like God knows when that's going to happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah,
I just think, well, why not? I think he should try and avenge that loss and go again. So
I think listening to you there, like you've made a good case for it, and like obviously again, it wasn't an entertaining fight. It was we'll talk about the knockdown. It was action packed. It was a good level in terms of both their skill sets. White potentially at the top of his game. Povetkin, you can argue maybe a little past his best, but I think with the Fury Wilder fight and the whole, I don't know what the word is, like people being unsure about that and the unknown element as to when it's actually going to happen, is it going to happen, all the rest of it. Like Povetkin's not necessarily going to be in a position to challenge Fury anytime soon. So does he make a couple of million or however much X amount he wants to try and get out of Matchroom?
I think Povetkin would take it straight away, because I think
again, like, what does he do in the interim? What does he do in the meantime? He's not going to want just like sort of tick over fights and keep busy fights.
Povetkin obviously has massively close links with Matchroom now, and I think he's obviously, what is he, 40, 41, something like that. It's like he's, for whatever reason, whether it's probably financially, sort of now seems quite happy with playing the role of like Matchroom away fighter, underdog type of fighter. Like, not underdog, but like he's happy to come over. He's fought Price, he's fought Hughie Fury, he's fought Michael Hunter in Saudi Arabia, he's now fought Dillian Whyte. If this is like a financial move to see the rest of his days out, and he's happy being that sort of, how do I word it? Not gatekeeper, but sort of opponent for hire. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, that's I said
he's
last night
obviously
that, like,
more than happy to do that. Like, if
he's
someone
that
told
gatekeeper to the elite level, like at a very, very high level. If you've got aspirations, and I said this in the build-up as well regarding Whyte, like if he's got aspirations or the belief that he's going to challenge Fury and Joshua, who for me are the two that are above everybody else. You can argue who's better of those two, blah blah blah. I'm not getting to that one, otherwise we'll be here all night.
Christ,
like if you beat Povetkin, then you're like, right, well, you know, you've proved that you could potentially be at that level, and I think obviously Whyte didn't. So then it's like, well, actually, like, who else does he face? What else is out there for him? If he's, again, got those genuine aspirations of getting to that world level, he obviously thinks he is and he should be there. And you can argue he won more rounds than Povetkin, but ultimately that's irrelevant with how the fight ended. It's like, it doesn't matter what's gone on before then, does it really?
I think there was a point in Povetkin's career where he was the project. He was fighting in Russia. He was what the money was behind. He was, you know, he was like a hell of a heavy, probably the second best heavyweight on the planet behind Klitschko at one point. Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. I mean, he's only lost to Klitschko and obviously Joshua, and I think a lot of people, a lot of the fan, I don't want to say the Matchroom fans, but a lot of boxing fans who are familiar with Povetkin will only know him from beating David Price, beating Hughie Fury, losing to Joshua, and obviously like a lackluster performance on the Joshua undercard against Michael Hunter. So from that point of view, and to be honest, that's what a lot of what I based like my prediction for this fight on, because I thought, well, like, is Whyte getting him at a good time here? He hasn't looked like great recently. He'll be a good name on his record, like potentially the best name on Whyte's record, argue Joseph Parker, but he'll be up there is the point. And like, is it that case of he's just getting him at the right time, and 4 rounds in, thought, yep, all the boxes ticked. He's a good name. He's a good level opponent. But again, ultimately, Whyte's proved too sharp for him. He's timed this perfectly, and then
that's it.
Perfectly.
You can't understand. You can understand why people have looked at it that way, and I was guilty of doing that myself, thinking, you know, he's in his 40s. He looked pretty old the last time against Hunter. He sort of, as I mentioned before, it's not all about Povetkin and being in Russia now and all that. He took that mentality of like, have gloves, will travel, doesn't mind coming over here. Obviously got that sort of arrangement with Matchroom. Do you know what I mean? Like,
he has, but in the same vein, like apart from the Joshua fight, like he was a comfortable favourite against David Price. Like, he's coming in as the away fighter, but he'd been this like a favourite for Hughie Fury. I think the odds would have been a bit closer for that. But like,
a few years ago, it would have been unthinkable for you to have thought Povetkin's coming over to England to fight Hughie Fury. Do you know what I mean? Or wherever it was. I
totally agree.
He's gone down this different direction in his career, and maybe that was, you know, to see him into his 40s and a bit more money and stuff. But he's still a hell of a fighter, and like, maybe people were guilty of overlooking him, I guess.
I definitely was. I fully admit that. Like,
I thought he looked a bit old.
What he had left.
I didn't think he looked great against Hunter last time out, and you know, and he can still look a bit flat-footed in there, and he can look a bit old in there, and he was obviously blown, come back to his corner. He'd been on the deck twice. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I just thought, oh God, like you said, Whyte's going to be the sort of bigger, stronger, like quicker, hungrier type of fighter, and you know that was all set up, like you said, to. But then that's the danger. Do you know what I mean? That is the danger of which gets you sort of back onto the commentary thing about like going into a fight with like a narrative that's already been preset and predetermined in your mind. You know what I mean? And I think that was sort of evident with Sky's commentary last night a bit as well. Like, you know, but like you say, like, and that's also leads on to the bit about like mandatories and Dillian and all this and who's going to fight Fury and all that. And it's like sometimes boxing can just throw a massive fork in the road and another cliche, spanner in the works. Do you know what I mean? And like, you know, now they've got this opportunity to go again, and like, you know, it wasn't meant to, like Frank Smith put a tweet out before saying it wasn't meant to end like this, and I probably wasn't for most people who had an investment or an involvement with Whyte. But then sometimes boxing can throw these things up where you can get a dance partner who suits you, and you can have these fights, and you think, well, bloody hell, that was good. That, like, let's go again. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes your career doesn't always just going to lead that maybe it's that way that Dillian Whyte wants, and if for whatever reason, then, you know, him and Povetkin are good together in a ring and fireworks happening and whatever, then go again. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't always work that way. That happily ever after Dillian wins, fights the WBC, great, everyone's happy. It's just like, that's the direction your career will go in due to circumstances and stuff, then why not do it again? Do you know what I mean?
This is one of the criticisms that's levelled at Matchroom, and you can debate whether it's fairly or not, is the word you just said there, this whole narrative. And it's not just Matchroom who are guilty of it, it's Sky as well, and other broadcasters, other promoters too. But with Matchroom and Sky being at the forefront and arguably the biggest at the moment, the best at what they're doing, they do attract like a lot more criticism. We've talked about this at length. But what gets me is they're sort of taking elements from like a WWE style of promotion. And like we've had it before, we've talked about Dillian Whyte, obviously his fights with Chisora, like the table throwing at the press conference and stuff. And I think that what they've done is blurred the line between what's genuine and what's actually like being scripted. And I don't mean that in someone sat down and wrote it and what have you, but a lot of like the aggro and the intense beef and all this sort of thing, it's obviously to generate attention, and it works. It captures people's imagination. And I think it's fine, and I don't mind all of that. I'm not massively interested in it. You can probably tell the way I'm talking about it. But if you're putting on the good fights, like competitive matchups, then yeah, like that, by all means, go for that. Try and draw eyes.
I know what you mean. I
don't know. I want to pick my words very carefully. But I think what bothers people and potentially irritates them about Dillian Whyte and his whole narrative and his career, alluding to what you've said there, like with how it was supposed to end. So yeah, if you're emotionally invested or financially invested in Dillian Whyte, like you've said, you want him to succeed. You want him to get in that world title picture, and you want him to do it for him. You probably wanted to do it for like the Joshua rematch, which we've talked about a long time, that Matchroom seemingly have been carefully moving pieces around and trying to navigate towards that. So that's out the window for the time being. All of this it's all well and good, but when it then like creeps into what's actually happening in the ring, that's when it leaves a really bitter taste with a lot of people.
Yeah, that annoyed me a bit last night.
Talking about the commentary, obviously you put a few tweets out about it, and I'd mentioned bits previously as well, I think, last night. And like the amount of people that we look through and obviously we interact with on Twitter and we follow us, whatever, that was saying the same sorts of things. It's like, as knowledgeable boxing fans, I don't want to use the term hardcore, that annoys me as well, to be honest. But like, as fans who've got a decent idea of what's going on in the ring and what they're seeing in front of them, it annoys you because you're sort of sitting there thinking, well, like, it comes across as a blatant bias, because very rarely is that sort of commentary and that sort of like story and whatever you want to call it, however they're fluffing it up, in favour of the away fighter.
No, that's it.
It's like, as you said there, the main event, there's like two men going at it there, both landing their own shots. Yet, if you don't know what you're watching and you're listening to that commentary, you're then led down the route of, oh, well, White's dominating this fight. It's absolute masterful performance. And you're like, well, just tell me what's going on in the ring. Don't like tell me what you want to be happening or what you've pictured to be happening beforehand. And it's bad enough with the commentary, but I think that also comes in with like the scoring and the judges as well. Like, if you are in the position where you're qualified as a judge or a referee or an official with the Board of Control, you obviously have an interest in boxing. You obviously watch it. You know what's going on. You'll probably sit and watch interviews. You'll read articles on it. You absorb all of this information. So you're going into that fight, and not necessarily that fight, but any particular fight, knowing what you do about the boxers, it's only natural that you're going to have an opinion on like what's going to happen, who's going to win, how the fight's going to go. And I think rather than it being like blatant corruption or incompetence, I honestly think a lot of it is subconscious. And I think it's just sort of going against your own brain in a sense.
No, that's it. And, these are the people that maybe, at the end of the day, there's always the option to like just turn them off, mute them. But
I did, and I'll get on that when we discuss the undercard, because there was a fight I literally just muted them and tried to score the fight myself.
And I know Adam, we always relate to this, don't we? We always refer back to this, that Adam Booth once he said years ago, just turn it off, just watch boxing with no sound, basically, and work it out for yourself. But it is annoying.
Right, now, imagine that, right? So imagine you're sat at home watching the fight. You've got the commentary on or whatever. You're sitting chatting to your missus, whatever you may be. You might be ignoring it. Might be sitting watching it. So you're focused on that fight. Obviously, pick up your phone every so often, message a couple of people and that, like, oh, how you got this? Oh, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Now, that's like the majority of your concentration is on the fight and you're watching what's going on. There's a few other distractions, there that you can eliminate quite easily. Obviously, the next stage is then, as you said there, turn the commentary off, sit in absolute silence. And I did this because I had my headphones on. I was watching on my laptop last night. So headphones on, absolute silence, just watching what's going on in the ring. Imagine you're doing that, but then you're also tasked with explaining what's going on in the ring. So like you're sitting as a commentator or a co-commentator like Matthew Macklin last night. You're trying to watch what's going on. You're trying to decide who's getting the better of it, who's landing the cleaner punches, who's maybe working that bit harder, who's missing, who's landing, who's doing what, who's trying to control the distance in the ring better and all this. But then you're having to sort of explain what you're doing in your head all the time. Like, to me, it's too much of a distraction.
No, I know. And
trying to multitask, and what ends up happening is they're not he's not scoring the fight particularly well or accurately. What he's saying isn't really the most insightful either. Like, save for a few little things, there's not a lot really picked up on that you don't sort of notice.
It is a bit annoying because Sky have obviously now made that decision to mostly, it seems, 99% to go with Adam Smith and Matthew Macklin as the two commentators. Do you know what I mean? They've lost, like, they've gone down that route. So that's, you sort of stuck with them as the in-house commentators. And I don't know, there's always been that argument with Adam Smith. And the more it gets pointed out, the more I notice it, that he doesn't shut up. Like, for 3 minutes, he doesn't stop talking. And he's not even calling the action half the time. He's talking about his backstory, his kids, the fighter's kids, his wife, his hometown. And it's like, it's not always needed. Do you know what I mean? Like, that can be done through the
needed. I'd argue, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you want to invest in the fighters, and some people need that. Like, I had this with someone on Twitter, escapes me who it was now. And I was talking about like the Luther Clay Chris Congo fight, which was on the undercard, and he was like, "Oh yeah, is this really good enough for a pay-per-view?" And I was like, "Well, to be honest, like it's fringe British level, but the two very evenly matched fighters, and I think it'll be a good fight." And again, being that slightly nerdier boxing fan, the both fighters I'm aware of from like Small Hall and
we are. But
I had a genuine interest in that. Whereas this, I think it might have been Tom Maltby, but I'm sorry if it wasn't a mistake in there. He was saying that he wants a bit more story. Like, well, where's the winner going to go? Is the winner should be like, they should be saying, oh, the winner's going to get in with Conor Benn or whatever. And I was like, to me, that doesn't matter. That's not something I'm after. But it's almost like Matchroom have created this monster and they need to feed that now. There's a lot of fans wanting that bit more in terms of a narrative. And if you're going to build that during the build-up of the fight, during the pre-match press conferences and all the rest, all the build-up that comes up to fight night, fine, but don't sit and then tell me that and regurgitate it while they're in the ring.
He does.
Seven bells out of each other. Or
he could just go silent for 30 seconds during a round and like let the action unfold in front of his eyes and call it as he sees it, sort of thing.
Massively underrated. He doesn't attribute, I think, or like a lot of people say that, and like I'd be all for that because
he doesn't stop talking.
Like talking to fill that dead air time, and it's not necessarily needed all of the time.
The bit that annoyed me last night. Go on, sorry.
I was just going to say what's important is it's not about calling every single punch that's landed. Like we used the Povetkin example of them just not calling anything. Like it's impossible. You haven't got the time in that 3 minutes to say, oh, he's landed this, he's fired back with this. Then, as you say, just pause, take like 30 seconds, and then try and, in a sentence or two, sum up what's happened in that 30 seconds. Who's had the better of that?
It doesn't. Oh, not everyone. I don't know. probably talks for the sake of talking, and sometimes it's totally just nonsense. It's like, just calm down. But like the bit that annoyed me last night was that it just seemed like he was just ignoring all of Povetkin's work, like not even acknowledging it was happening. Like it was just, I've got it in my head that White's the fresher, hungrier, fitter fighter who's improved and blah blah blah, and he's beating Portugal, he's doing this, and it was like, at the same time where Povetkin is landing, but like it was the second round, and I thought, am I gone mad here? So I tweeted it, and then I was like, they haven't acknowledged a single shot. Like, do you know what I mean? And
it was
like,
a good little short hook from Povetkin, wasn't it? And it just like stopped right in his tracks. You saw his head sort of go, and like not go as in he was any danger, but
he definitely
stopped him. And you, like, I know exactly which bit you mean.
I just thought it was a bit disrespectful for round 1 and 2, like to just not even mention it. Like, I don't know, it was just that narrative was set that Povetkin's looking old, White's in charge, White's coasting, and it's like, it's just bizarre. And Macklin sort of stuck to it today on Twitter as well, being like, oh yeah, he's lost every round, Povetkin. White, he just pulled out this punch, and people were arguing with him, saying like, no, like, why couldn't you see it, sort of thing. And I don't know.
This is where I don't think it's like that corruption, and I don't, like, some people have said that they're sort of imagining this little round table of all the Sky and Matchroom lot sat together, or like the commentators have been told, like, you need to defend the home fighter, you need to big up this lad or whatever. I genuinely don't think that's the case. And
no, I think it's probably
I think it just comes down to that over familiarity with the fighters, because
I think it's unconscious bias, me personally.
Yeah, same. Exactly the same.
You know, whoever's signed to Matchroom, it's a very sort of, it does seem from the outside looking in that it's quite tight, and do you know what I mean? They have the favourite sort of, I don't know, trainers and media people, and everyone's sort of linked in this little bubble, and do you know what I mean? I don't know.
Oh, of course like, it is, and like
it's all very pally. Do you know what I mean? And like
we've been guilty of that with like on like the northeast scene. Like I know it's slightly different with a small hall set up in the nature of those fights, but like we've been backstage and spoken with boxers and stuff, and you give them a little fist bump. Oh, good performance, that, like, because you generally want them to do well.
Yeah.
So like it's that on a national stage, and I think what it comes down to is like Sky. Obviously, we hold to different standards than like we do ourselves, and like the independent media and stuff. And like you can totally imagine that if we or anyone on our sort of level in terms of boxing websites and YouTube channels and all the rest of it, we're in that position, you'd sort of slide towards doing the same thing.
You would. I've watched fights in my little, you know, my house and that and whatever. And like, if I know a fighter, or if I like a fighter, or if I think, God, he's sounding, you watch it and you do. It is a bit, you know, a bit of bias there, and you think, you know, he's doing well. You can't do that. It's definitely a bit unconscious bias. I just think I don't know, last night was just frustrating, and I think boxing Twitter like really made us realise I wasn't actually losing my mind, and because there was so many people that said the same thing last night. Like, it was like, there's a lot of educated boxing fans, like you say out there, who were watching this and said the same. Like, I don't know, I was just borderline sort of rude. Like, it was just weird. Like, why couldn't you say it? And like, I don't know.
In theory, it was odd. These are like these people, like Sir Matthew Macklin, obviously a very experienced, very successful boxer, very eloquent as well. Like, he speaks really well. Like, I've enjoyed listening to him loads of times, and I don't want to feel like I'm digging him out. It's just he's the sort of top example, isn't he? But he should be able to watch that fight, see what's going on, and then present something to the audience that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. Like, don't just sort of repeat over and over how well White's doing.
Exactly.
Like, I say this, I don't particularly like want a scorecard from him either. Like, I don't really, and I don't want to say I don't care, because like I mean this from whoever's commentating rather than Macklin personally. Like, just break down the action. Like, why is White throwing that jab, for example? Like, again, lots of fans might know that and understand, but what's he doing differently? Why is Povetkin eating that jab? Why is he not moving his head? Why is he not out of range? Like, these sorts of things. Like, what is the tactics? What can he spot that maybe we couldn't?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
Like, one example, Rob Tebbett in Boxing Social, like, he tweeted towards the beginning, and moving again further down the card last night, but he tweeted really early on, like first or second round, that Chris Congo's best punch was the little left hook over the top of Clay's right hand. And like, you could see it land a couple of times, and again, like the commentary didn't necessarily pick up on it every time. Like, a couple of them, like, oh, that's a nice shot. But other than pointing out that it was a nice shot or that it landed, there wasn't any like rhyme or reason behind why he was doing it. And that's the sort of next level analysis, I suppose, you want from a co-commentator or a pundit. And obviously then, like, 9th round, Congo lands that left hook, and basically that was the beginning and the end. Like, but he'd been landing it throughout the fight without any real sort of focus on it or anything, any analysis of it. Like, why was Clay, for example, not adjusting to that? Like, what did he need to do better to avoid getting caught with it?
I guess so. I guess that is your next level. Do you know what I mean? That might
and this then comes from
the man in the
box. Yes, they're really experienced, but are they eloquent enough to get the point across and explain things clearly? It's that old adage of you being a good footballer doesn't necessarily make you a good manager.
It is a bit of that as well. You could be the best
boxer in the world, but if you can't then sit and explain to a potentially novice level audience what's going on, and create that picture and explain like these technical and tactical nuances.
The man in the pub might not even want a massive tactical breakdown.
No, and that's
I just think
I understand that I'm not necessarily Matchroom's target audience for a lot of the aspects of their promotion.
Yeah, don't mug people off by not even like, even our mates who we were talking to in our group last night, one of the lads had been out since pretty 2:00 in the afternoon, and he was half cut when I dropped him off home. Do you know what I mean? Like, and he's sitting watching it at 11:00, even more drunk, and even he's saying to us that this is ridiculous. They haven't even mentioned a single shot that Povetkin's done. Like,
and it was similar through like the Taylor and Pursuit fight as well.
Like, I know.
This is not isolated to 2 rounds. Like, I think it was a particularly bad example all through the card last night. Like,
but there's other fight camp examples as well, though. Like, the Shannon Courtney fight the other week. Like, as I know, Macklin was very pro Courtney, and to be honest, I thought Courtney was doing well, but there was again more ignorance of. It was as if Rachel Ball's shots were hardly mentioned. Do you know what I mean? It was all about Courtney, sort of the way she caught the knockdown and came back strongly. And there was an element of that she did, but there was 2 people in that fight as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was, I don't know.
And
there's again that narrative of the Matchroom fighter and the fighter they've all got. They're probably close to. Do you know what I mean? They'll see her a lot more than they do Rachel Ball on the circuit, and they'll see her more at functions and do's and press conferences, and fight weeks and interview. You know what I mean? It's not just a case of turning up on a Saturday night. They're all closer. Do you know what I mean? And
exactly. And if that unconscious, like, obviously not so much now with the lack of crowds, but like you always see them in the crowds at other events and stuff. And yeah, of course, like they're going to mingle, they're going to see each other. I think the Courtney and Ball fight was a good example of the commentator fixating on one very specific element of it, and it was almost every time it happened, Macklin was repeating that. Oh yeah, like, and it was what I'm talking about. Like, obviously, for those that don't know and didn't see the fight, Courtney got dropped in the first round. In the first round, she was probably winning, to be fair. She was the shorter fighter, so she was coming in, she's moving ahead, off centre, left and right, slipping Ball's jabs and landing a big shot over the top. She did that well, and then she got caught with a little hook herself and picked herself up off the canvas and, recovered, lost the first round. The next 2 rounds, I actually think Macklin called it brilliantly because Courtney kept the composure. She moved ahead again. She was slipping. She was staying nice and low. Macklin said, like, she needs to see even, she's a smaller fighter, but she needs to get even lower to get underneath Ball shots and work her way in. And she did that well for like a couple of rounds. But then later on in the fight, like, I messaged you saying, like, Courtney's looking tired here because she's eating a lot of jabs. She's trying to move ahead. And she was doing it every so often, but nowhere near the consistency and the regularity. And the result was Ball was pinging her with the jab. She was hitting her with the jab a lot more and catching her coming in. But
yeah, I think I listened to Macklin too much.
But again, then Macklin was saying, like, it wasn't. Again, it's that I'm not saying it's hard. It's impossible to pick up on every little thing, but it just seemed that every time he was mentioning or highlighting it, it was when she managed to slip a shot and ignoring the fact that she'd eaten 2 before that.
The thing is, he is capable of. He's like, I like Matthew Macklin. That's the thing. I was listening to his podcast last week. Macklin's take with him, and he had Joe Gallagher on, and like, when he's in full flow, and he's definitely worth a listen. Like, he was revisiting his fight with Felix Sturm and talking about like the mind game side of boxing and stuff like that. And it was honestly, it was a really good listen. Like, I'm not slating him for the sake of it. I'm not anti-match.
It sounds like we're having a proper go at him, and like he knows more.
To be honest, it wasn't Matt. It was more Adam Smith. It was more Adam Smith than it was him that I was annoyed with last night. It was like, as the main commentator, as the lead, like, who talks for more than he does. Like,
why do you think he's the main commentator?
Because he's the head of Boxing and Sky, isn't he? Which is that not a what's the word I'm looking for?
Perk.
No, like, is that not a confliction of?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
This is what I was going to highlight there. He's the head of boxing, and he might be able to strike the deals, and he might have got Sky loads of money from the boxing, and like put on all these amazing shows, and he might have been integral to all of that behind the scenes that we don't see. But that doesn't mean that he's the best person for the job of commentating. No,
it'd be like bloody. That's it. Like, I don't know, like the head of Boxing and Sky commentating on Matchroom shows. Then it would be like bloody Lee Charnley commenting on Newcastle United games on Sky.
It's his job to advertise and to promote and to make it sound like he's product.
How can the head of Boxing and Sky be completely neutral when it's his business that he's commentating on, and it's his sort of financial involvement and all that? Like, how exactly. You're never going to get it. You know what I mean?
And again, when I say, well, why is he? Like, what reason is there to have him as the commentator? It's not saving any money, because they still have got Chris Lloyd and Darren Barker doing it for DAZN on the international feed. I don't understand. Like, I think they're the niche popular favourite at the moment. And to be honest, I've heard them a couple of times. I enjoyed what they've done. I'm not massively familiar with their commentary because we're generally stuck with with what's on Sky.
Aye.
But like, why not just have the feed for both of them? Like, have them two commentating? Or just have Adam Smith and Macklin on for both Sky and DAZN?
If he's the head of Boxing at Sky, then that's his money you're talking about, and his sort of business and what have you. How can he then be trusted to be totally impartial and call what he sees on a Matchroom show? He can't. That would be
it's much more like the head of to have Dillian Whyte bigged up than Povetkin.
That would be like the head of media at Newcastle United being told to do the commentary for Newcastle on Super Sunday. Do you know what I mean? And expecting him to be like,
what a left back how well it is.
Expecting him to say how well Tottenham are playing. Do you know what I mean? Where if he's a Newcastle fan, he works in Newcastle United, he's obviously going to come out with that angle. So it opens up a can of worms. Like, should he be in that position? Like, should he not be one position removed? Like, fair enough, do some ringside interviews or whatever you want, but should the head of Boxing and Sky be commentating on them fights? I don't know. But again, they're all
from a fan point of view, but like we just said there, it's hitting the nail on the head, isn't it? It's in his interests working at Sky and holding the position he does to big up the product and to make it, like, hype it up, to advertise it, to promote it, to make like people want to tune in the next time Dillian Whyte fights, Katie Taylor fights, whoever like the Matchroom fighters are. It's in his interest to have them appear as big and as good as they possibly can.
That's it. And I know, honestly, we could spend hours doing this. Like, I know it is. It's just, I'm glad that a lot of people can sort of see through it and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of good, as there is every week. We've sort of tweeted in the last 4 weeks. There's a lot of good banter, like good, knowledgeable boxing crack on Twitter, and it's, I'm glad other people can also see through it and stuff. Like, there's,
and then
people,
I know you
aren't
see the full show, so we'll have a little run through. But before we do move on to that, did you see who they had in the studio alongside Anna Woolhouse and Johnny Nelson?
AJ was there. Yeah, see them. Yeah.
Now, again, on a similar theme, Joshua's been in there with Povetkin. He's been in there with Dillian Whyte. He should, in theory, be the best person on the planet to give a good breakdown of what both fighters bring and like what they're going to try and do in the ring, where it's going to be won and lost, all these little factors. And he basically just sort of laughed it off when asked him for a prediction. He was like, I'm sitting on the fence now, I can't possibly say and all this. And you're like, no, like, again, like, yeah, he's there because he's Joshua. He's not, but like as a pundit, as his role in that little scenario, like, do you not like, especially for like pay-per-view, like, do you not expect a little bit more analysis, like a bit more? I don't know, just like any sort of like you can argue football's gone too far the other way, the amount of time they spend in the studio, but at least they sort of try and break things down about what's happening in the game, and like you'll have Jamie Carragher on his tactics board and stuff. And yeah, he's unashamedly biased in front of Liverpool, but not to the point where he won't criticise them.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I can't.
Even as a Liverpool fan and an ex-Liverpool player, if they've played badly, to pick holes in their defence or criticise someone for not working hard enough, not moving enough showing for the ball, whatever. Whereas I think in boxing, you've sort of defined that. Obviously, the word bubble's been used loads recently on it, but like they're in that little bubble, and it's almost like it's very, very difficult for them to criticise or to, I don't know what the word, basically criticise like any of the home fighters.
I do know what you're saying. I think, like, I don't know, like you say, the WWE thing, like, is his name enough for the casual market just to do some more? Like, I got a notification come through on my phone the other day, AJ will be on the Sky broadcast and all that. I was like, Christ, do I need to know that? Do you know what I mean? But is his name just enough?
This is it. Enough because again, people know that he's fought both of them. So like, oh, he's going to have he doesn't like Dillian Whyte. Oh, there's going to be some aggro and that. And like, if White had won, you can imagine him shouting over to AJ. And again, that's the side of it that it doesn't interest me in the slightest. However, I did send out a couple of tweets. Might have been today, actually. I can't remember. Today and yesterday, last night, just blurred into one. Basically, singing Matchroom's praises for what they've done since like boxing has returned.
I've just done that as well there.
Last night was one of the very few pay-per-views that I actually pay for, and
I didn't.
Zero intention of doing so. I was just like, whatever. It's like 5 fights on the card. Like, is that worth 20 quid? It's not a world title fight. It's not what I would call the elite fight, and it's not like a Joshua versus Ruiz, for example, the rematch. I paid for that. Like, it's not if Fury and Joshua got made that I can't possibly miss. It was one I could take or leave. It was probably going to be a good fight. Like, obviously turned out to be fairly evenly matched. Like, that was it, really. There wasn't anything like if White didn't fight Povetkin, for example, he would have still been in the position he was before the fight. He was still the mandatory for the WBC. There was jeopardy. He's now lost that, but I didn't really expect him to lose either. So it was a bit like, well, that didn't really attract me to it. But then looking down the card, quality over quantity for me. Like Katie Taylor versus Pursoon.
Great fight, good.
There's a rematch there. We'll talk about that fight from last night in a bit more detail as well. Clay Congo, I've already touched on that. It's a fight I was interested in. Jack Cullen was meant to be fighting Jason Quigley originally, which would have been a good fight.
Oh, was he? I didn't know.
Yeah, that was meant to be on the card, and then Quigley pulled out. So then Zach Chelly come in, another fighter I'm sort of familiar with. I know the name, know he's a decent level prospect. And then like Bakoli and Kuzmin was meant to be on. I thought, well, actually, like from top to bottom, they're competitive fights. Like when Eddie Hearn was saying about no easy fights in fight camp, that card, that up for me. I mean, like
flipping that on its head though, like you could argue that Clay Congo and Chelly Cullen was late announced, but Chelly Cullen you could argue that they sort of wouldn't look out of place on a next gen show. Know what I mean?
Oh, the 100% wouldn't. Clay Congo would have been a good headliner for that level of thing. But
hey, and I love the Clay Congo fight, by the way.
I know exactly what you're saying, and like this is the sort of discussion I've had on social media all this week, to be honest, with various people. And I was initially coming at it from the side like, I don't really think it's worth it. But I'm also of the opinion, I've been banging the drum, like just make competitive fights, like.
Yeah, well, that's fair. It doesn't have
to be...
We're
a rare breed in terms of what boxing we'll watch and what level we'll drop down to. But if you make a fight on paper, even an area level fight that's even, got two lads or lasses with similar level of record, similar level of experience and all the rest of it, like let them go. Like, I'd much rather that than say,
agreed.
Could have used, for example, looking at the other fight camp cards, they could have taken the bigger name of Anthony Fowler and put his fight on.
Correct. Good point.
Whereas that was
which they've done before.
Fights in fight camp, like him beating Harper, like it was.
Yeah.
Like, would that have maybe drawn a few more fans? Like, Fowler's obviously got a lot of supporters.
No.
Then maybe bought the card rather than Jack Cullen and Zach Chelly fighting. Like, possibly.
You're totally right.
But for on a boxing card, you've got fairly decent value down either side there. Like, and that's how it turned out as well. Like, this is the thing. It's not with hindsight that I'm sitting here saying, "Oh, it was a really entertaining card." Yes, the stunning knockout at the end was the icing on the cake. But Taylor and Pursoon was a hell of a competitive match the first time. Loads of people thought Pursoon won. Few question marks about what condition she was in. Put them to bed. She was fantastic throughout. That was a great fight, a good 10-rounder.
Yeah.
Claire Congo, again, like, not necessarily the most popular fighters in terms of the viewers that they'll bring, but it's another fairly even match that you think, well, actually, either of those could win that, and it wouldn't really be a surprise. Cullen and Chelly chucked in at the last minute. Like, again, it turned out to be a really entertaining fight because they're both at a similar level of experience. They're both going in believing they can win, and they both had to work really hard to get like what they got out of it. Obviously, Alan Babich and Shondell Winters ended up on the card because Bacoli and Kuzmin falling through. Mm-hmm. That one, in reality, is your filler, isn't it? It was like over and around, basically went into the second, but like Babich were not going to win that. So from that, that's the only sort of blotch on the card for me. Like, yes, I'd have preferred a few more fights on. Like, I wouldn't have minded, say, as you say, like a big name Fowler against Harper added on to that, but obviously they were capped with the 5 fights per card, aren't they, at the minute with the COVID restrictions?
I totally agree with what you're saying there. Like, they've been guilty of that before, of putting a name on, like names on the undercard, but not against anyone flash. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, even if Luther Clay, Chris Congo aren't the most standout names to like casuals, and who the hell are them, you know? And Cullen Chelly got announced, and it was a bit, oh god, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not Callum Smith against a random, or it's not, you know what I mean? Like, you could have done it that way, but give me Clay Congo over them, over like a Fowler Harper. Do you know what I mean? Like, I like that fight. Like, when I say it could have been on a next gen show, it could have been a headline fight on a next gen show, but it doesn't mean it's not a good fight. It's a cracking fight. 2 lads that have sort of came up the hard way, paid the dues to the sport and that, and put close odds with the booties, and, you know, good stuff. Like, Chelly Cullen, I didn't see, but again, like, you know, it's a good, proper, solid fight. Like, I'd rather watch that than someone just blasting someone out, like, just because he's a name. Do you know what I mean? And
and this is what I mean by, like, I decided yesterday to pay for the card because I sort of looked at it a bit closer and thought, actually, like, there's going to be some decent fights on there. I can't confidently pick a winner in a lot of those fights. Mm. And
Bacoli Kuzmin was a blow. Like, I hope. Yeah.
I used the phrase like accidental value. Sometimes I think like Matchroom will put on a card, and again, other promoters do this as well. Like, and on paper, it's a fairly one-sided fight, but then it turns out to be entertaining, or turns out to be a close fight. Like, for example, like Whyte Chisora, going back, obviously Dillian Whyte being the topical example. When they first made him against Chisora, it was like, yeah, it's a good fight on paper, like 2 heavyweights that can both bang, it should be entertaining, blah, blah, blah. But not many would have given Chisora a chance of actually winning that.
Oh, that's it. I know.
In the end, it turned out into, like, I mean, obviously built up into a little rematch as well. But, like, I think there's a lot of that where, like, in hindsight, they'll turn around and say, oh, well, there was only 20 quid for that. Oh, what a fight that was, blah, blah, blah. And I've seen a bit of that today as well. Like, oh, who's complaining about the 20 quid now? And it's like, well, probably the same people that were complaining about it before.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
On paper, it was a competitive card, and in hindsight, it was a competitive card.
That's it, and that's all you can ask for. Competitive fights. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, you've got to stick. How do I word it? You've got to move with the times in boxing, and the fact, like, how do I word this without sounding like a knob? That there's a whole host of generation of fighters now that have either like retired or like they're coming towards the end and stuff like that, right? And like I'm talking about, like, say some of our friends here, you're not going to know every name now that's on a Sky card. It's not those days anymore of Kell Brook and the Smith brothers
the days of
and Bellew. And when we went to
once or whatever.
when we went to Liverpool to watch Bellew Cleverly too, and on that undercard you had George Groves, I think you had James DeGale, you had Anthony Joshua. Do you know what I mean?
That's the exact card I was thinking of before when you were talking about it. Like
card of names, like
Callum Smith defended some WBC
aye
title or whatever. Like,
you know, aye.
The full card was Matchroom name against opponent.
Yeah, it was. And the big names though, like your man in the street knew them names. Like if I said, my dad was like, "Oh, who's on?" and I'd be like, "Oh, DeGale, Groves." Do you know what I mean? He'd be like, "Oh, I cracking, I know them." But
yeah, exactly.
People who I was with last night, me mate, like had never heard of Chris Congo or Luther Clare in their life, and I guess, you know, the sport's ever changing and it moves in front of your eyes sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like before you even realise it's going. Do you know? And there's a whole new people, and like Chris Congo is a talented fighter, and there's a whole like it changes. Do you know what I mean? The landscape changes, and like fighters move on, and new fighters come through, and you can sort of be a bit like you could look at that and think, who the hell are these people? Who's Bacoli? Who's such and such? If you're not paying a massive close attention to the sport, like you wouldn't know every name. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't,
I think that's, again, it shows us like more than one way to see that. It's a totally different show. Like, and it really annoys me because it shouldn't be different. It should not be the exception. It should be,
no.
Every show should have this level of competitive fights. Like, in terms of money, it can't possibly cost that much to put Jack Cullen and Zach Chelly on.
No, nah, I know.
In the grand scheme of things, or Luther Clare, Chris Congo.
No, totally not. No, they're good fights. Like they are good fights, and like, I know, and I totally know what you're saying. Like maybe when boxing, you'd hope gets a bit more back to normal, then you would have the next gen shows and that again to showcase some of these people and stuff. Like, you know, like.
But the problem comes again from then the bridge between next gen and pay-per-view. Like we've just said there, the line is very blurred. You've got fights on here that would be good on a next gen show that are suddenly propping up a pay-per-view card.
Honestly, I was thinking about this the other day. Like there's a load of like I sort of tweeted about it earlier. Like I'm dead intrigued as the way Matchroom are going to go for the rest of the year now. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of fighters in this country now who haven't been involved in fight camp and who at this point don't have fight dates that like must be like, so I know it's really unprecedented times and all that, and COVID and the future's uncertain and all that, but there's a lot of fighters that need to be careful that, I don't know, they're just getting by on name alone and who are sort of stagnating at the minute because they're not fighting. Like, where's Kell Brook? Where's Callum Smith? Where's Billy Joe Saunders? Where's Josh Kelly? Do you know what I mean? Like, at what point is Robbie Davis going to fight again? And all these names of like, you know, familiar type of names, and there's probably more than that I forgot to list. But like, there's a lot of people out there now that need fights like quickly. Do you know what I mean? Like, Cam Smith hasn't fought since like the back end of last year. He's fought in Dam and there's someone else I can't remember who he's fought since he won that belt. And like, I don't know. I just think, like, when's Kelly Evanesian going to happen? And when's Billy Joe Saunders going to, like, he hasn't had meaningful fights since Lemieux, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
I agree.
It's there's a lot of fighters out there that should be like Kell Brook. Like, why is Kell Brook not absolutely gagging to get on one of their fight camp shows? Like, he's fought puddings for like 2 or 3 years. Like, is he not desperate to get a fight? Do you know what I mean? Like, where's Eubank Jr.? Like, where's all these names that, like, I don't know. Time waits for no one in boxing. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I know it's tricky, and like, you know, without full arenas and blah blah blah, and they want paid well, and I get that, but like at the same time, I just think there's a lot of fighters out there who run the risk of like really sort of letting their careers stagnate. That's my thoughts anyway. And that's why I'm dead intrigued as to see what will happen now for the rest of this year. Like, you know,
yeah, like without saying I told you so. Like, we chatted about this, and I don't know if it was on a pod on Twitter or just like between us or whatever. And it always had like the potential following the lockdown to go one of two ways. Like, you'd either have fighters desperate to get back in the ring and them putting themselves in risky fights. Like Congo Clay, for example, was made before lockdown, so that one doesn't really fall into that category. But like Katie Taylor, like wanting the Pursuing rematch, it wasn't originally like nailed on to happen, but she's entertained that and like wants that competitive fight. Obviously Eggington and Cheeseman, like, yeah, like, put me in it, like it'll be a good fight. Like you've got those fighters that have tried to take that opportunity and got themselves a good win, or they're coming off a good performance, and hopefully they've propelled themselves onto bigger things. But I also said there'll be boxers who will be, maybe speculating, the more well-paid boxers who don't fight as frequently. They'll be happy to sit it out because they're used to fighting twice a year or even once a year in some cases. So it's not actually making that much difference to them.
Like, where's Amir Khan? Is he still fighting?
Yeah, as far as I know, he tweeted something about him against De La Hoya the other day, I think.
It's funny though, because I don't watch like Hearn's interviews with like Coogan and all that lot, because like like sometimes I do, but not as frequently as I used to. And that I'm not like, I'm not as privy to like what's going on. And he's probably hit like I've seen Billy Nelson say Bacoli's going to be on a Matchroom show in September, and like, there'll be people out there that'll know the date, the venue, the lot. Like I really don't know. Like, I don't pay that close attention. The only when I know it is when I see it in our email inbox, or if I see it on social media when a show's been announced. So like, I'm not naive to think there's going to be no shows. Like he's obviously got stuff in the works. Like Conor Benn, for example,
it's just interesting.
Conor Benn was another one who
what it is.
Screamed. Conor Benn screamed fight camp. Like, and he wasn't involved. Like, he's that type of level. He's not British level. Do you know what I mean? He should.
No, like I know Clay Congo, as I said, that was already made. But like, the cynic in me looks at Chris Congo now and thinks they'll struggle to make him against Conor Benn. Like, there'll be something in the way. There'll be something. We'll just keep them apart. We'll let that marinate or whatever. And it's like Conor Benn should be screaming out for that sort of fight. Like, man, get me in. Like,
no, I'm assuming he's got something lined up, Conor. But like, they're obviously. Matchroom are obviously like going to announce more shows. Do you know what I mean? Like Frank Warren's put the thing out saying save the date, and typical Frank Warren style, where he's been like, we've got shows on these dates, but he hasn't actually announced who's on them yet, which is standard. But like,
I think without having announced it, that's probably what Matchroom will have done as well. Like they'll have got some dates lined up, in various venues. It's then obviously a lot of waiting around to see
how the government
comes of it. What happens? Obviously, the Newcastle one is one we're hoping comes through, even if it's in reduced capacity, like we spoke about that with Savannah Marshall last week in more depth. But outside of that, nothing's really been confirmed, or even.
No, it hasn't yet.
Really.
I'm guessing something might drop this week. Maybe it's just as a guess to keep that momentum coming on the back of Fight Camp, and then maybe something for September. I don't think they're going to wait from now till written in sort of October. I don't know if Selby's still listed on BoxRec. No idea if they've taken that off the website because they've sort of accepted that they'll put the Selby show just behind closed doors anyway. But I don't know. I guess there's a lot of it's up in the air due to, like, I know rumours are that they're going to trial football fans from October. Maybe it's a 20 or 30% capacity. I don't know. Like, snooker had a bit of a crowd in last weekend, and I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of a waiting game before they announce. Like, didn't I see rumours like Joshua Pulev could be on a fucking boat or a yacht or something? Or have I just made that up?
I've missed that one, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Maybe I've made that up. I don't know. Like, you just, with the success of Fight Camp, and I tweeted about this earlier then, they might continue to think outside the box. Do you know what I mean? They could literally have Joshua Pulev on a fucking floating barge in the Thames, and like totally, or a bloody hotel roof or something. You just don't know the way they're going to think. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, they had the Oklahoma show, didn't they? Like, they put it in the middle of the road and closed the road and the street off.
Really? No, I didn't know. That's mint that. Like,
it looked spectacular, and this is again like where Matchroom do deserve credit.
Massive!
Outside the box, they've created a product out of the most challenging of circumstances. Obviously, Frank Warren sort of adapted, didn't he? And he had his show in York Hall, and like in one way, I thought I was really impressed with that. It looked quality. It looked like a really revamped, revitalized way of doing it, but at the same time,
it did look better.
Looked like his TV studio.
No, that's a good point. It did. I thought it looked better than I did struggle with some of his BT stuff. I did. The MTK one, not so much. I don't know. Like,
I haven't seen the MTK one. I know there's one coming up.
You can't go too hard.
I'll have a look at, but
you can't go too harsh in on MTK because they're not the main two. Do you know what I mean? like the massive management company, but as you know that they're sort of on that sort of small hall-ish level. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got no qualms with them using the studio and having John O'Carroll as. I think there was a cracking night.
Yeah,
do you know what
like,
I mean?
It's
like,
almost been like an equaliser because, like,
yeah,
again, I know there's an upset, and that's what I'll sort of class as accidental value. Like, they brought Maxi Hughes in there as a decent name, arguably the second best name on, or would have been the second best name on Carroll's record. But that was a fight that a lot of people just expected John O'Carroll to dust off the cobwebs and win comfortably. Yeah,
I think
it's turned into it's an upset. It's an exciting fight. It's a bit more interesting, and that's like the accidental value. But for this sort of like time, that's a perfectly acceptable fight for, as you say, like a rung up on small hall, shall we say?
I think I'm just looking forward and a bit excited and curious to see. Like, there's 4 months left of the year now. Really, like, get rid of August. That's gone. So you've got September, October, November, December, just to see how it sort of plays out from this point. Who's going to get announced and who's going to sort of fight between now and the end of the year, really. And I think, like, in what they do next. You know what I mean? Like, what? I don't know if. I think it all depends on the crowd, you know, because I think I don't think Matchroom would be willing just to be like, right, we're going to go from this spectacular fight camp and your pyrotechnics and all the amazing settings. And I'm not saying you can do outdoor garden shows in bloody November. I just mean, like, I don't think they'll settle for just like an empty Newcastle. I was going to call it the Telewest Arena there, whatever our arena's called now. Do you know what I mean? With just green seats, with just green seats in the backdrop. And I don't know. I just think, you know, and like, I was asking April Hunter about it the other day. I was like, any news? And she was like, nah, still going ahead. Just waiting to hear. Crowd, no crowd, partial crowd. Just don't know.
I think like one element we've not overlooked, but we haven't mentioned, is like the revenue brought in by a crowd.
Oh, that's it. I know
that. Small hall shows have basically been non-existent, and a few of their lads have ended up getting on the BT shows and on the Sky shows, because without selling tickets, those shows don't go ahead. Like, the ticket sales basically cover the costs and maybe make a little bit from the promoters. Obviously, Matchroom have got a bit more behind them in terms of the Sky deal, and same with Frank Warren and BT, and it's a little bit more complicated with the TV deal. But essentially, they need to make or maximise their profit from the fighters selling tickets in the same or a similar model.
That's it.
Like,
every sport will be desperate for fans there. Like, Christ, football must be absolutely desperate. Like, especially League One, League Two, who haven't.
Yeah, no, that's the thing.
You know what I mean?
Lower down the
gate revenues,
Premier League,
massive.
Champions League, they get their money from TV rights regardless. They're not going to be missing out on a massive chunk of their revenue from
without
the crowd turning this in
there. Without turning
down the chain, definitely.
Without turning it into a football podcast, there's no coincidence to like say that the only things that resumed were like post-lockdown was Champions League, Europa League, and the big leagues in Europe. The money leagues, Bundesliga, La Liga.
But it is so like bringing it back to boxing. It's exactly the same. Like, the big promoters with the TV backing are the ones that have got their shows up and running.
It's just fascinating to see how it all plays out from this point. Like, obviously, I really hope Newcastle goes ahead from totally selfish reasons. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd love to be there in some capacity, like, if possible. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know if that'll be the case or not, or possible. Like, as we touched on it with Savannah, like, it's a logistical thing to sort out as well. Like, how do you then determine who's going to be allowed in? You know, if that's nearly sold out anyway, because it might be, because it's being moved twice. Do you know what I mean? People will still have tickets from April and June for that. Do you know what I mean? So, like, how do you then decide which capacity is allowed in, who are you going to refund and all that? It's pretty tricky, but it's very interesting. But I think we'll just have to see who they're going to announce and like which fights they announce between now and the end of the year, and see what happens. See how the landscape plays out. But I guess at the minute you're at the mercy of the government and this virus. I guess. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's tricky, isn't it?
No, this is it. The inevitable second wave potentially hitting and all that jazz.
I know.
But no, that's the thing. That's why we're saying it's the unknown, isn't it? People don't know. Like, they can book the dates and stuff, but then are they going to be hesitant to pay sort of booking fees or deposits or whatever they need to do to secure the venues? Or the venue's going to have to be more flexible because they're not getting booked up with anything else.
I know, that's a good point. It's a very good point.
It'll be an absolute nightmare behind the scenes with everything going on and them running around trying to have things in place.
Absolutely, I know. I just watch the space type of thing with football and boxing at the minute, just to see, like, it's a different type of crowd than sitting spaced out of the crucible. Do you know what I mean? Like, people want to drink at the boxing and you want to get involved, and I don't know. It's very. I wouldn't like to be a betting man and say which way it will go, like, but I just hope it. I hope it does come back to some sort of normality, but we'll just have to see, yeah. But no, I'm just intrigued as to who will be announced on Frank Warren's and Eddie Hearn's shows between now and the end of the year, and what type of level of cards we'll be looking at and venues and stuff. So, something to keep an eye on, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, one card that is announced is happening obviously next weekend, and it features on our Round for Pound competition.
I've gone blank. Does it? Which one?
Like that link? Did you like that seamless link?
Lovely. Are we talking Sonny Edwards, a Somber card?
We are, yeah. Daniel Dubois headlining, I believe.
Yes. Aye, against a new opponent.
So rather than us sitting speculating and hoping what's going to happen, I'm going to put you on the spot. How do you see some of these fights going?
Hit me.
Daniel Dubois versus Ricardo Schneiders.
Dubois early knockout. I did a little bit of research on Schneiders. I say research. BoxRec Schneiders when he got announced. Due to the previous opponent pulling out, lost, I think, for some sort of Netherlands cruiserweight title or some sort of cruiser title.
Cruiserweight alarm bells, like.
And I was just like, oh my God. But again, similar to Joe Joyce's, pinch of salt as a tune-up, hopefully before the inevitable Dubois-Joyce clash later in the year. I'm not sure on the date of that.
It's interesting that one got pulled to then obviously hoping for an audience and I know those figures in. Whereas I think actually if that had still happened with a decent undercard, chuck that on pay-per-view.
Yeah,
people can't go, therefore more people might be tempted to pay.
So I know
and watch the card, but obviously, yeah.
I'll go Dubois knockout in the first 2 rounds.
That's exactly what I've done. Exactly what I've done for my prediction. I think it's a 12-rounder as well. It's scheduled for, so it's basically
Jesus Christ.
Look as to I think which pair of rounds Dubois does the business in for me. Like it's
he'll
if he wants to get the rounds in, he might take it a bit longer, but.
I don't know if he's capable of that. I don't not capable. I just don't know if that's in him. Do you know what I mean? Like
Well, yeah, that's the thing as well.
He's destructive, isn't he? He's destructive.
Even if he's relaxed and takes his time, he's still going to catch him with something that'll.
Come on, hit me. Next one.
Plant him on his arse. Next one, we've got Sonny Edwards, as you mentioned, against our little local favourite, Thomas Asomba.
Sonny Edwards points.
I was just going to say that's over 10 rounds, that one.
Younger, fresher. I like Thomas. He's a good sort of test for people at that level. He's been in with like Jay Harris and that before. He's got some decent wins on his record, but a bit older now. But, he's not always at it. Thomas, depends what Thomas turns up, but I'd expect Sonny to have too much for him.
I think Sonny's he's knowledgeable enough and like without blowing smoke up his arse, he knows he's boxing, so that he'll be aware of Asomba. He'll not look past the record. He'll know exactly what dangers are there, and it's not probably the biggest name and the biggest challenge for him. I think there'll be enough there to motivate
keep him on his toes.
Good performance.
Definitely, yeah.
Edwards will go the distance as well. We're going to be tied on predictions. Yeah. We've got Sam Maxwell against Joe Hughes for the WBO European Super Lightweight title.
I like Joe Hughes.
Maxwell is 13-0. Joe Hughes, 17 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw on his record.
Maxwell was the one that obviously got that sort of knockout reel highlight last year, where he was losing and his opponent was goading him in the last round, and Maxwell caught him with an absolute peach of a shot and knocked him out right at the last minute.
That is
I'm going to go with Joe Hughes points. I think Joe Hughes is a tidy little fighter at that level, and I like Joe Hughes. I think he's fought well against Robbie Davis and stuff before, and I think he's a decent fighter, Joe Hughes. I've seen him on the Matchroom Italy shows not long ago. He was class over there. Joe Hughes points.
Interesting. Maxwell's he's impressed me. I've seen him a few times, and see you sort of read up on him and you get a bit more familiar. He's former Team GB. I think he was in the World Series of Boxing. I keep saying the Super Series, but the World Series of Boxing. So a decent amateur pedigree. Another off the endless conveyor belt of talent coming from Liverpool. I believe he's backed by MTK and trains with Danny Vaughan, or Danny Vaughan trained him for his last fight, or that fight where he secured that knockout. All that said, I've already done my predictions. I went for Hughes on points as well. I said,
I'll make sure I do these. I won't change my mind here.
No, you stick to them. No, I just think like Hughes is operated at that higher level. I think he doesn't have the power that Maxwell does, but I think he's a tidy little boxer, as you said. He'll frustrate him, and I think that's like a good little trade fight. That's a good fight. It's one I'm interested in watching.
It is, really is.
It's not one that'll capture the imagination of the wider boxing public, but
no, it's a solid little card that though.
It's definitely one to watch. Next one off that card, we've got Willie Hutchinson against Luke Blackledge in the light heavyweight division. I believe over 10 rounds as well.
Top of my head, I'm going to go Hutchinson stoppage between the 5th and the 6th. I like Luke Blackledge, but I think he might have been around the block one too many times at this point. Getting older. Hutchinson, younger, fresher, hits hard. I like what I've seen of him so far. I think it's a good time for him to fight Blackledge, so I'm going to go Hutchinson for sort of stoppage between the 5th and the 6th.
See, I haven't written mine down. I'm just trying to get online to check because I think I've gone for literally the same again. Anyone listening, we have not rehearsed this. We've not planned this.
He's put me on the spot. I'm sitting thinking, God, what's he going to ask us next? Because I know where it's going. I know it's going towards the following midweek's MTK show, which
it is. So I've got Hutchinson KO 5-6 there.
Oh yeah, actually.
Yeah, exactly the same. I just think just what you've highlighted there, like Blackledge is operated at a higher level, but he's feeling the effects now, and he's obviously he's got that edge and experience, but he's also got a lot more wear and tear. I think he's been stopped probably 3 or 4 times as well now. Lost his last few. Yeah, so I've gone with that. Next one, we've got Philip Bowes against Akeem Ennis-Brown. British and Commonwealth super lightweight titles. So you're talking 140 pounds there, 10 stone division.
Here's a question. Really, I'm just gonna Google something before I ask you this question. 2 seconds. Philip Bowes.
Intrigued now. I feel like Adam Smith having to fill the dead air space.
Name a Northeast fighter that both of these fellas have been in with.
See, I don't know if this is right now. I'm panicking, but I know definitely Ennis-Brown beat Glenn Foote up here.
Yep,
so
correct.
I'm going to assume that Philip Bowes fought Glenn Foote as well at some point.
Philip Bowes did fight Glenn Foote. It was Glenn Foote's sort of 2 fights in a row. Glenn Foote beat Philip Bowes in May 2017 for the English super lightweight title at York Hall. Good win on the road for Glenn there, but then lost the English super lightweight title in 2 months later in July against. I don't think we were there that day. Against Akeem Ennis-Brown at the Stadium of Light, and I didn't really know who Akeem Ennis was then, and I was like I remember being absolutely shocked at that, but came up here sort of unfancied from wherever he's from, down south somewhere, and just sort of did a number on Glenn Foote at the Stadium of Light, which was mad. So there you go. So on that basis, I'm going to go for Akeem Ennis-Brown points, using Glenn Foote as the benchmark here. If he beat Glenn Foote and Glenn Foote beat Philip Bowes, then I'm going to go for Akeem Ennis-Brown points.
I will have to track Glenn down, see if you can give us a bit of insight on them. Try and break it down.
He's only got 1 stoppage, Akeem Ennis, from his 13 fights, so I'm assuming he's not a massive puncher. So I'm going to go, because from what I've seen of him, he's a bit of a tricky, awkward, not massively pleasing on the eye opponent, but a bit of a bogeyman at that sort of level. Talks a good game on social media, definitely doesn't lack any confidence in his abilities and stuff. So I'm going to go Akeem Ennis-Brown points.
And then last one, we've got Dan Aziz versus Andrea Sterling. That's on the same card, the MTK card.
That's another good little fight. Is that the English? Is it English light heavy title? That I don't know. I think it is, isn't it? Because he beat.
I think you're right.
Aziz beat our our Northeast's Lawrence Sweaty, didn't he? Very, very comfortably on points a few months back to win that belt. So he looked good that night without massively hurting Lawrence. Lawrence didn't really offer much in return. Aziz won it very, very comfortably on points. Like I say, I like Andrea Sterling. Very sort of come forward, head down, windmill in his arms, and seen him in some good scraps over the years. I think that's his level, though. I remember seeing him in with Ricky Summers at one point as well. I like him, but just think I like what I've seen of Aziz so far as well. And I think he's probably my favourite to win that one. I think he'd probably be looking at bigger and better things in the future. But as I say, I think that is Sterling's sort of domestic type of level fighter at that stage, like small hall / English, round about that level. I'm going to go Dan Aziz points.
I think that's the only one we've actually differed on.
Right.
The other one I went to Jimenez Brown on points as well, so literally all the same. It's all down to this last fight for us two, and I went Aziz in the stoppage in that rounds 9 and 10. I think
you got a
get him later on. Like basically, your analysis of it is essentially my train of thought and thinking. Like Aziz is he's very highly rated by a few people within the trade, so I think destined for bigger and better things as you.
Yeah, he is. He definitely is. Then I'm looking forward to that.
Still a good opponent. Good. It'll be a good fight for him. It's not going to be all his own way, but I think he'll get the job done. I've hedged my bets and said a little later on in the fight.
I think that's another solid 6 fights, mate. Personally, I think that's 4 on the BT show on Saturday, followed by another 2 on the MTK show the following Wednesday. I think that's the 2nd of September, maybe. So you've got 4 on the Saturday, Frank Warren show, 2 on the MTK show. That's your 6 fights for that week. And I think that's some good, solid sort of domestic clashes in there. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, again, it's just what we've talked about, the competitive side of things. Like, they're all fairly evenly matched.
Yeah.
So you might not think it, the fact that we've blindly agreed on the way every one of them is going to go, but there's enough to think about, isn't there? There's the Frank Warren card, you've got some heavy favourites in some of those, but as you drop down the levels, as it were, like to the, I want to say area, but obviously national titles, isn't it, with the English, and there's obviously Commonwealth and things on the line. There's a couple of fights there where there's a good case for both men. You're not just arguing for the sake of it. They could go either way.
And like I was saying earlier, that like when you go on BoxRec and you get to that Jimenez Brown date, that Wednesday, then that's where it sort of tails off. Do you know what I mean? That's where, like, as I called it, boxing sort of project restart sort of ends. I was
going to say that was
not much to
obviously.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention the predictions there. It's been absolutely flying at the minute, with the boxing shows domestically coming thick and fast. I think we'll take a little opportunity to thank everyone who has played and signed up and to provided us with some feedback, good and bad, though I will say mostly good. Like it's been brilliant for us. It's obviously increased our sort of interactivity and people visiting the website, and like we are aiming to just build it and keep getting better and better. We've got loads of ideas for how we can improve it. We're going to send out a little bit of feedback. So at the moment, we've got round 5 live and ready 5 live and ready for predictions. But then, just hinting at what you're saying there, we're sort of struggling a bit beyond that. We're going to have a look and see what's coming up. We might have to go a bit further afield and maybe set up the following round, sort of coming towards end of September. I know.
Yeah, I just maybe
contract cards have been announced, so there's a couple of fights there we potentially put on.
With rumoured Matchroom shows in the works as well, and also worth checking those Frank Warren dates as well. I'm sure there's going to be hopefully some announcements this week as well. So we'll get something up there, and it's just like, but as you say, there's been a cracking few weeks. I'm still a bit disappointed with the last night's score, I won't lie. I thought I'd done better than that. It's bugged us. I haven't checked to see where I went wrong last night, but I'm a bit annoyed about that.
But again, last night, I think it's that, again, like we've talked about, competitive, innit? Like, there've been a few people have chipped in and told us on the Round for Pound Twitter, at Round for Pound BBB, that they had Povetkin winning by knockout, but they got the round wrong. Someone got it absolutely spot on. Like, I know I went with Dillian Whyte for that one. There'll been a lot gone for Whyte. Taylor Pursoon, I think Taylor Point would probably be in the consensus pick. there's a draw thrown in there, like Chelly and Cullen. It's like there's enough there. There was a different results. Like there's a big mix there, so the spread of points is quite wide, I think, on last night's results.
It is, and it's I don't know. It's gone really well though. Like we're best to source some good prizes and stuff, guaranteed giveaways. That it means that if you've only just started playing in the 5th round and you think, God, I'm miles down this leaderboard, it's not necessarily the case that you can come away empty-handed. You know what I mean? You can join in at any time and stuff. So we've got that. I've got that poster to send out this week as well to the winner last week, and then obviously
it was Lewis Wells last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we've got another winner of the Roberto Duran autobiography this week as well, which we'll have to tweet out.
Yeah, well, should we drop that now and then we'll contact him as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Was it Brian McAnally that won that?
It was Brian McAnally with a sensational 21 points. So for those that aren't too familiar with the scoring system, 5 points for an exact prediction. So if you predict the knockout, the correct winner, obviously, knockout and the rounds, which we've paired, you get 5 points for that. If you correctly predict a draw, you get 5 points. And if you correctly pick a winner on points, like by decision, you get 5 points as well. So out of a total of 25 potential points, he scored 21. So I think he's basically got 4 spot on and then 1 correct winner, but the wrong method. So I don't know, because I can't say in detail of Brian's predictions, but I think he's possibly called the draw correctly.
Who is he? Do we know him? Is he a regular?
I'm not familiar, to be honest. I've seen the name. He's played 3 out of the 4 weeks so far.
Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I know the names and I don't know his. I don't.
Yeah, we've got Brian's email address, so if you're not listening, Brian, we will be in touch with you. So if you're not listening, there's no point me telling you that.
I'll check. I'll get the other one sorted as well. For the poster as well. I'll get that sent out this week, so then we're all up to date with giveaways and stuff. So, hopefully in time, we'll try and keep growing this and get, better prizes and stuff like bigger and better things to give away. Hopefully, the more contacts we make and the more, the bigger we get, the more we stand out. But no, thank you for everyone that's playing. It seems to have, the new website and layout and stuff seems to have gone down really well, and we're getting quite a decent little core numbers of returning players and stuff, and people who say it enhances the fight nights and the way they watch boxing and stuff, and it's mint. I'm really, really pleased with the way it's going as well.
Yeah, so, and I think that it fits in. We sort of knew there was a market for it, and we worked hard and we thought long and hard about how we could try and present it. It's already at its essentially 3rd or 4th iteration. We've had different versions of it. We know at the moment it's got its limitations, but focusing on the positives, it's brilliant that a lot of the feedback we've received ties in with how we see it and what we're looking for in boxing. We both bet on boxing, and we're both sick of the perceived lack of value in that. You put me on speaker there.
Oh, no, we're there. No, you still there?
Yeah, I just went all crackly there. There's a perceived lack of value. You hear it so many times. You look at a card and well, if I put a tenner on for trying to predict all 5 winners, I get 11 quid back or something. And you're like,
with 30 pence.
So we've tried to mix that up a little bit, and I think as well, with the guaranteed giveaway, there's the highest score of the round. Just as we've said there with Brian McNally and the previous winners. You don't have to get all of them right. You've got that insurance that you still walk away with a prize, even though you've one leg of your acca's let you down, to use a bit of boxing, so to speak.
Yeah, and hopefully in time we'll be able to increase the jackpot if maybe look to get sponsors and stuff involved in that. But again, that's down the line, still early stages at this point.
Yeah, within the first month, sort of 4 weeks this has taken us. So in the first month we've smashed past 150 players. I think it's good going. As you say, there's a core of returning players. You can see that in the scores. Some people are just so consistent with it. It's infuriating.
I know. They're very good. But no, it's been great. And just what was I going to say? Who else was I going to thank at the end of this? Just thank everyone that would listen to our podcast with Savannah Marshall last week as well. That seemed to go down really well. So that's still up there on all your usual links, Spotify, YouTube. Just search British Boxing Blog, you'll find us. There was a lot of good feedback for that as well. So again, if anyone wants to catch that hasn't already, then please take a listen, because that was very good as well.
Yeah. Little shout out to Spenny Mo Sports. We're talking about sponsors there. They're obviously round for pound as well. If anyone does get all of the predictions absolutely spot on, they're £500 to spend in Spenny Motorsport. So big thanks to Kieran for backing us up with that one.
I know, definitely. I think that's probably a good place to end. I know there's more boxing this week. Wednesday night, MTK Globe have got a show. It's not a round for pound show. We've decided to miss this one out, but if anyone wants a midweek boxing fix, then that's on IFL channel on YouTube as well. So plenty of boxing still to come for the next couple of weeks. So enjoy your week of boxing, everyone.